The first time Yerin protected me, she stood between my face and a bowl of cold soup. The bowl had been thrown by Lee Min-jae, heir to one of Seoul's largest hotel chains, because I refused to surrender my cafeteria seat. Yerin caught his wrist before the soup landed and asked whether expensive schools taught manners separately from tuition. The room went silent. Everyone knew her family owned more buildings than Minji's family-owned excuses. My name was Kang Ji-ho, and every student at Seoul Crown University believed I was poor. They were not entirely wrong. 6 months earlier, I had been delivering groceries at night and repairing phones between lectures. My mother still lived above a laundromat, and my younger brother still compared supermarket prices before choosing snacks. What nobody knew was that a silver message had appeared on my phone and changed the value of everything I touched. The message called itself the Forgotten Value System. It did not print money or reward humiliation. It showed me assets people had abandoned too early: failed patents, dying shops, ignored land, rejected inventions, companies one decision away from survival. If I restored their real value instead of stripping them for profit, the system transferred a percentage of the future ownership to me. In 6 months, my hidden portfolio had grown beyond anything I understood. I still wore the same worn shoes because the system had one brutal rule. Any wealth I used for vanity before completing 100 restorations would be frozen for 10 years. Medical care, education, wages, and rescue investments were allowed. Luxury purchases, status displays, and social revenge were not. I was secretly worth more than many conglomerate heirs, but I still checked whether the cafeteria charged extra for rice. Yerin released Minji's wrist only after he apologized to the cafeteria worker whose floor he had nearly ruined. Min-jae muttered that she was embarrassing herself for a scholarship rat. Yerin looked at me, then back at him, and said choosing the decent person in a room was never embarrassing. That sentence stayed with me because rich people had defended me before, but usually only when cameras were present. Yerin was the only daughter of Cha Seongo, chairman of Sewa Group. Her family controlled department stores, construction companies, logistics centers, and half the luxury apartments visible from campus. She was famous for refusing bodyguards inside classrooms and for remembering the names of employees other heirs ignored. Students called her kind as if kindness were an unusual hobby for wealthy people. I thanked her after lunch. She asked whether I planned to keep allowing Min-jae to treat me like furniture. I said furniture usually cost more than my semester meal plan. She almost laughed, then noticed the cracked edge of my phone. I moved it away before the system screen could appear. Yerin had saved me from soup. I was not ready to explain that my phone quietly controlled companies richer than her family. My first restoration had been a neighborhood battery workshop everyone believed was dying. The owner, Mr. Bay, had developed a safer storage cell but could not afford certification. The system showed me its hidden value and gave me a rescue path. I used every saving I had, helped him file the patent, and found a university lab willing to test it. 3 months later, an energy company offered billions for licensing. I refused the buyout and negotiated royalties instead. The system transferred 12% of Bay Energy materials to me. That one stake became worth more than Seoul Crown's entire scholarship fund. Then came a failing medical sensor startup, a forgotten shipping algorithm, and an abandoned recycling plant. I restored them quietly through nominee trusts, while campus students still assumed I skipped breakfast because I could not afford it. The truth was more complicated. I skipped breakfast because the system budget was strict, my mother refused to accept unexplained money, and I was afraid of becoming someone who solved every uncomfortable feeling with a purchase. I had spent my whole life being ignored. Sudden wealth made revenge feel available in ways poverty never had. The system protected my future by limiting my worst impulses. Yerin began sitting across from me during lunch. At first, I thought she was trying to prove a point to Min-jae. Then she started asking about my engineering project, my mother's laundromat, and why I always removed onions from curry. She listened to answers instead of waiting for her turn. That made her more dangerous than any bully. Attention reached places money could not. Her best friend, Co. Dami, warned her that people would misunderstand. Yerin replied that people had misunderstood her since birth and she did not intend to organize her life around their comfort. Dami studied me carefully, not cruelly, but like an accountant checking an unexpected expense. She asked what I wanted from Yerin. I said for her to stop stealing my dumplings. Yerin stole another one. Min-jae did not accept losing an audience. He spread rumors that I had engineered the cafeteria scene to attract Yerin. He claimed poor men specialized in looking helpless near rich women. Students began filming whenever Yerin spoke to me. Some treated me like a clever parasite. Others congratulated me for winning what they called the Chaebol lottery. Yerin became angrier than I did. She confronted Min-jae publicly and told him I had never asked her for money, introductions, or protection. He answered that patient parasites waited. I wanted to crush him with the truth. I could have bought the dead of his family's weakest hotel before sunset. The system detected retaliatory acquisition intent and locked my trading interface for 24 hours. Grand wealth came with a digital babysitter. Instead, I asked Min-jae whether he believed every relationship had a price because nobody stayed near him without one. His smile disappeared. Yerin stared at me afterward and said that it had been unnecessarily accurate. I admitted I had been saving it for someone. The system marked emotional retaliation, but no financial abuse. Apparently, verbal damage was allowed in moderation. Our engineering department announced the Horizon Challenge, a national competition where students built technology for public use. Winners received research funding and direct recruitment. Yerin studied business, but joined as project coordinator because her family foundation sponsored accessibility research. I proposed a low-cost power module using technology inspired by Mr. Bay's cell. I could not reveal that I partly owned the patent. My teammate Han Wusik laughed when I said we could cut manufacturing costs by half. He was brilliant, insecure, and addicted to approval from rich students. Min-jae recruited him into a competing team and promised an internship at Lee Crown Hotels. Wusik left with our early calculations and told everyone my project had no commercial value. The system identified the abandoned design as a restoration candidate. I should have been furious. Instead, the system showed me 3 improvements Wusik had overlooked. It never gave complete answers. It revealed neglected potential and demanded real work. I spent nights rebuilding the circuit with Kim Nari, a quiet materials student who had been excluded from other teams because she spoke slowly under pressure. Yerin handled budgets, schedules, and the professors who assumed she was only decorative. Our 4th member was Moon Tae-sung, a former athlete studying industrial design after a knee injury ended his career. He understood how products failed in actual hands. Together, we built a portable emergency power unit light enough for elderly people and strong enough to run medical devices during outages. For the first time, I used my system knowledge beside people instead of above them. Yerin never treated the project like charity. She challenged my cost estimates, rejected a supplier connected to child labor, and forced us to design instructions ordinary people could understand. When I accused her of turning one machine into a social revolution, she said poor design punished the people with the fewest alternatives. I stopped arguing because she was right. One night, the lab lost power while we tested the prototype. Nari panicked because the cooling chamber held weeks of samples. I connected our unfinished unit and kept the chamber alive until maintenance restored electricity. The system approved emergency use and quietly increased my restoration count. Yerin watched me configure the cell with knowledge no ordinary student should possess. She asked how I knew the patent architecture. I said I had worked part-time for a workshop. That was technically true. I had swept floors and assembled casings beside Mr. Bay before becoming an owner. Yerin accepted the answer, but Dami did not. She began searching my employment history and found gaps where shell companies had protected my identity. Before Dami could confront me, Sewa Group entered crisis. News broke that a foreign private equity fund had purchased large positions in Sewa affiliates. Analysts called it ordinary market pressure. Yerin knew better. Her uncle, Cha Guangmin, had spent years criticizing her father's cautious leadership. Suddenly, executives loyal to him began demanding asset sales and emergency restructuring. Yerin stopped eating lunch and began taking calls between lectures. She tried to smile, but I recognized the expression of someone watching family danger through a glass wall. Sewa's stock fell every day. Rumors claimed Chairman Cha was sick, that the banks had lost confidence, and that Yerin would be forced into an engagement with the son of a rival family to secure funding. The system opened a massive hidden value alert around Sewa Group. It showed that the company was not failing naturally. Someone was suppressing warehouse income, inflating construction losses, and redirecting profitable contracts through private companies. The system estimated Sewa's true value at 3 times its market price. Restoring it could make me richer than Yaren's entire family. I had already become wealthy through dozens of small restorations, but Sewa was different. It was not a forgotten workshop. It was a giant wounded from inside. Investing would expose me to political attention, family warfare, and accusations that I used Yaren to acquire her home. The system offered no easy path. It simply displayed, restoration requires consent from an affected stakeholder. I could not ask Yaren for consent without revealing my secret, so I did nothing at first. That decision became unbearable when her father collapsed during a board meeting and was hospitalized. Guangmin took temporary control of negotiations. He announced that Sewa would sell its logistics division to stabilize debt. The division was profitable and employed 20,000 people. Selling it would strengthen the attackers, not the company. Yaren returned to campus the next morning because her father had ordered her not to abandon her studies. Minjae approached her with flowers and an offer from his family. Lee Crown Hotels would support Sewa if she publicly dated him and allowed their families to discuss marriage. The proposal was business dressed as romance. Students watched, believing they were witnessing something glamorous. Yaren rejected him before he finished. Minjae asked whether she preferred the poor boy who could not pay for her coffee. She looked across the courtyard at me and said yes. The answer froze the entire campus, including me. She had not confessed love exactly. She had chosen me over an alliance worth hundreds of billions, believing I owned nothing but a broken phone and stubborn pride. Minji's humiliation turned cruel. He announced that when Sewa collapsed, I would disappear because poor people loved rich girls only while riches lasted. Yaren walked past him and took my hand. Her fingers were cold. She asked whether I would still eat cafeteria food with her if her family lost everything. I said I had been hoping she would finally stop stealing my expensive dumplings. She laughed, then cried without warning. I stood there holding the richest girl on campus while everyone assumed she had chosen poverty. The truth twisted inside me. She had risked her family's rescue for someone secretly capable of buying every company involved. Her choice proved her sincerity. My silence began to feel less like protection and more like theft. That night, I asked the system whether revealing my wealth would cancel the restoration rules. It answered that secrecy was optional, accountability was not. I had hidden because anonymity protected investments and my family. But there was no rule requiring me to deceive Yaren. The system displayed a warning: emotional relationship built on material misunderstanding. Continued concealment may cause irreversible trust damage. I decided to tell her after we completed the Horizon prototype demonstration. Before I could, Dami confronted me in the library archive. She had traced my name to Bay Energy licensing documents hidden behind nominee trusts. She also found that my student ID had been used to authorize a medical sensor patent worth more than most listed companies. She asked whether I was a criminal or an heir. I told her neither answer was simple. Dami said simple answers were a luxury I had already exhausted. She cared about Yaren and believed I had allowed her to sacrifice real opportunities while pretending to share her limits. I said I had never asked Yaren to reject Minjae. Dami replied that not asking did not erase what I knew when she chose. I showed Dami the system interface and expected disbelief. Instead, she read every restriction twice and asked for financial verification. I opened one restricted portfolio page. Her face lost color when she saw the valuation. My combined stakes in restored companies already exceeded Sewa Group's market capitalization. I was not merely richer than Yaren's family. I was becoming one of Korea's largest private asset holders. Dami wanted me to tell Yaren immediately. I asked for 48 hours because Sewa's logistics sale was scheduled for board approval, and revealing myself without a rescue structure could let Guangmin claim I had manipulated Yaren to seize the company. Dami agreed only after I signed a statement giving Yaren access to every record if I disappeared or lied again. The system approved Sewa as restoration number 79 after Dami, an affected stakeholder through Yaren's consent proxy, authorized an investigation. It did not release unlimited money. It showed me the company's hidden fracture map, falsified invoices, shell suppliers, warehouse land undervaluation, and debt covenants triggered by Guangmin's allies. One shell company belonged to Minji's father. Lee Crown Hotels had secretly purchased Sewa debt, while Minjae offered romance as rescue. If Yeren accepted, her family would have traded control for temporary liquidity, and the Lees would have gained access to Sewa's logistics network. Min-jae might not know every detail, but his proposal was part of a larger trap. I contacted Cho Mira, chief attorney for my restoration trusts. She was the only adult besides my mother who knew the full portfolio. Mira formed an emergency fund called New Dawn Partners and began purchasing Sewa debt from panicked lenders. Because the fund's owners were hidden, Gwangmin assumed another foreign attacker had entered the market. At the same time, I worked in the lab as if nothing had changed. Yeren noticed I was distracted and asked whether I regretted her public choice. I said no. She asked whether I felt pressured. I said only by our prototype, her uncle, Min-jae, and the possibility of national economic chaos. She thought I was joking about the last three. Our Horizon demonstration succeeded until Wusik accused us of stealing his team's battery control code. He presented timestamped files showing our core algorithm on his laptop weeks earlier. Professor Beck suspended our project pending investigation. Minji's team became the likely winner. The timing was too perfect. They wanted Yeren publicly discredited while her family faced the board vote. Nari nearly collapsed. She had written most of the control layer and believed nobody would trust her against Wusik's confidence. Taesung wanted to confront him physically. Yeren stopped both reactions and demanded the raw repository logs. Professor Beck said student systems had been corrupted. I realized the conspiracy had reached into the competition through someone with administrative access. The Forgotten Value system identified our rejected prototype as temporarily abandoned and offered a restoration path. It highlighted an offline backup Nari had created on a test controller because campus internet often failed. The device contained signed build logs predating Wusik's files. He had copied our code and changed visible timestamps, but the hardware signature remained. We presented the controller to an external judge. Wusik broke under questioning and admitted Min-jae had promised him money, an internship, and protection from plagiarism charges. Min-jae denied ordering anything. Then Dami produced messages where one of his assistants requested access to our lab and discussed embarrassing Yeren before Sewa's board vote. The university removed Minji's team and reinstated ours. Wusik faced discipline, but I asked the panel to separate his confession from Minji's manipulation. He had betrayed us and deserved consequences, yet his fear of losing opportunity had been exploited. Nari agreed on the condition that he publicly correct the accusation and leave our project permanently. Yeren watched me after the hearing and asked why I understood desperate people so easily. I told her I had spent years being one. That answer remained true even if my account no longer matched it. She said wealth could change quickly, but humiliation stayed in the body longer. I almost confessed in the hallway. Then her uncle called and ordered her home for the emergency board meeting. Dami drove Yeren while I joined New Dawn's legal team through an encrypted connection. Gwangmin proposed selling logistics assets to a company controlled by Lee Crown. Chairman Cha attended from the hospital by video and opposed the sale, but several directors claimed he lacked capacity. Yeren had no board seat and could only watch. Minutes before the vote, New Dawn Partners disclosed that it had acquired enough Sewa debt to block the sale under creditor protection clauses. The room exploded. Gwangmin demanded to know who controlled the fund. Mira answered that New Dawn represented long-term restoration capital and would reveal beneficial ownership after independent auditors secured the records. The sale failed, but the battle worsened. Gwangmin accused Yeren of arranging a secret takeover through outside investors. Min-jae claimed I was her messenger and had seduced her into betraying family control. Nobody believed a poor engineering student controlled New Dawn, which made me useful and invisible. I hated both advantages. Yeren returned to campus exhausted but relieved. She hugged me before asking whether I knew anything about New Dawn. Dami stood behind her, waiting to see whether I would lie. I said yes. Yeren pulled back. I told her the fund was connected to investments I had helped manage. That was the smallest honest piece and no longer enough. She asked how a student who borrowed lab tools helped manage a fund powerful enough to block Sewa's board. I opened my phone, but before I could show her, an emergency alert appeared. Chairman Cha's hospital had lost access to a specialized cardiac monitoring system because the supplier suspended service over Sewa's credit downgrade. The supplier was one of my restored companies. I authorized emergency service instantly, violating no system rule. A replacement team reached the hospital within an hour, free of charge. Yerin received confirmation while standing beside me. The service order listed authorization from majority stakeholder Kong Jio. She read my name twice. There was no graceful way left. I opened the restoration portfolio and showed her the companies, patents, land trusts, debt positions, and system valuations. The total number exceeded Sewa Group's market value by a margin that made the screen look fictional. Yerin did not gasp. She became completely still, which was worse. She asked how long I had known I could save her family. I said I had known Sewa's true value for weeks, but needed evidence and stakeholder consent before acting. She asked how long I had known she believed I was poor. I said from the beginning. Her eyes filled, not with relief, but humiliation. Yerin said she had defended me because she believed powerful people were treating someone vulnerable as disposable. She had chosen me when everyone warned I would become a burden. Meanwhile, I had watched her sacrifice alliances while secretly holding more power than anyone in the room. She asked whether her kindness had been another asset the system measured. I told her the system had never rewarded me for her feelings. She replied that I had still benefited from her misunderstanding. Every meal, every defense, every moment she worried about my future had happened inside a reality I controlled. She did not accuse me of stealing money. She accused me of stealing equality. Dami told Yerin she had learned the truth 2 days earlier. That betrayal landed separately. Yerin walked away from both of us and refused my driver, my security, and my explanation. She took the subway to the hospital alone. The richest girl had chosen the poor boy. Discovering he owned everything made her feel poorer than before. The system displayed no instruction. It had rules for assets, exploitation, and restoration, but none for repairing trust. Mira advised me to issue a public statement before rumors spread. I refused. Yerin's pain was not a public relations threat. If Sewa survived while our relationship ended, I would accept the consequence. Chairman Cha asked to meet me privately. He was recovering, proud, and furious that a 21-year-old stranger held his company's debt. I expected him to discuss Sewa. He asked what I had done to his daughter. I told him the truth without defending myself. He listened, then said money had taught me caution but not courage. He did not thank me for saving his medical care or blocking the sale. He said if I wanted to help Sewa, I would do it through transparent terms that did not make Yerin responsible for my investment. If I wanted forgiveness, I would wait until she decided whether I deserved access to her life. For once, a chairman sounded more like a father than an executive. I separated the restoration from the relationship. New Dawn publicly offered Sewa a restructuring plan with independent audits, employee protections, and no personal control for me. My debt position would convert into non-voting shares until the company stabilized. Yerin's family would not owe me marriage, loyalty, or private gratitude. Guangmin attacked the proposal as disguised conquest. He leaked that New Dawn's owner was a student close to Yerin, hoping scandal would destroy both of us. The internet discovered my hidden companies one by one. Reporters gathered outside my mother's laundromat before I could move her safely. Mother called me an idiot for hiding wealth badly, then refused a luxury relocation. She accepted security only after someone threw a camera through the laundromat window. My brother Junseo stared at the news and asked whether we were really richer than Yerin's family. Mother told him being rich enough to attract broken glass was not an achievement. The public turned me into competing fantasies. Some called me a genius investor. Others called me a fraud using poor clothes to manipulate a chaebol heiress. Both versions ignored the years before the system, when I truly had been poor. Wealth had arrived quickly. Identity had not caught up. Yerin released one statement. She said New Dawn's financial proposal should be judged independently from her personal relationship with me. She confirmed I had never requested family access or money. Then she asked the public to stop treating her choice as proof of my virtue or her stupidity. It was careful, fair, and distant. Min-jae used that distance. He visited Yerin at the hospital and offered evidence that Guangmin had falsified Sewa invoices. In return, he wanted immunity for Li Crown's role and another chance to discuss marriage. Yerin accepted the documents and rejected the condition. She had learned from me that useful help did not purchase personal rights. Minji's evidence revealed Li Crown Hotels had financed Guangmin's shell suppliers, but his father planned to abandon him if the scheme failed. Min-jae had been arrogant, cruel, and used by someone more powerful. I felt no need to rescue him from consequences. Understanding a cage did not require opening it before the prisoner admitted who he had hurt. The Horizon Challenge final arrived amid the scandal. Our team considered withdrawing because media attention surrounded every test. Nari refused. She said poor communities facing blackouts did not care whether their power unit had been built by a secret billionaire with romantic problems. Taesung agreed, less politely. Yerin did not attend. We presented the emergency unit without hiding its origins. I disclosed my stake in Bay Energy and recused myself from prize funding decisions. Nari explained the materials. Taesung demonstrated accessibility. I described how abandoned technology had become useful through shared work. We won the engineering award but rejected the commercial sponsor tied to Lee Crown. The prize money went into a student-controlled development cooperative. The system counted restoration number 81 but transferred no extra ownership to me because I had surrendered personal rights. Instead, it recorded distributed value. That reward felt better than another hidden percentage. Yerin watched the presentation online from the hospital. She sent Nari congratulations, Taesung a joke about his terrible slides, and me nothing. I deserved the silence. I stopped drafting messages and began writing a complete timeline of every hidden asset, decision, and lie connected to her. Not as persuasion. As information she had the right to possess. I sent the file through Dammy with a note saying Yerin could delete it unread. It included the first day I noticed her, the exact moment Sewa triggered the system, every purchase New Dawn made, and every reason I delayed disclosure. I did not call my reasons excuses. Intent could explain damage without canceling it. While Yerin decided whether to read it, the Sewa audit uncovered a larger threat. Gwangmin had pledged warehouse land as collateral through forged board approvals. If the fraud became public before emergency refinancing, foreign lenders could seize logistics hubs and trigger mass layoffs. Exposing him recklessly would punish employees first. The system offered two restoration paths. One used my personal wealth to buy the collateral at a discount, giving me control of Sewa's most valuable land. The other required a worker pension consortium, bank cooperation, and Chairman Cha surrendering family voting power. The second was slower and reduced my profit almost entirely. I chose the second path. Chairman Cha agreed after one brutal meeting. Yerin's family would lose absolute control even if the company survived. He said his generation had confused ownership with protection. Gwangmin had exploited that belief, but the belief itself had made Sewa vulnerable. Employees were given representation in the land trust. Pension funds financed part of the rescue. New Dawn guaranteed losses, but received only capped returns. The system marked restoration integrity high and unlocked evidence, showing Gwangmin's forged approvals had been created by Sewa's internal legal director. The legal director disappeared before investigators arrived. Dammy traced his last corporate card use to a Lee Crown resort near Busan. Min-jae knew the resort's private service routes. He offered to help only if we protected his mother, who had no role in the scheme. This time, he asked for something related to safety, not Yerin. We agreed through lawyers. Min-jae led investigators to the director, who surrendered with encrypted records. Those files proved Gwangmin and Min-jae's father had planned to divide Sewa after collapse. Lee Crown would take logistics routes. Gwangmin would retain construction assets. Thousands of employee pensions would absorb the losses. Min-jae testified against his father. The decision destroyed his inheritance and did not erase what he had done to me, Yerin, or Wusik. He publicly admitted manipulating the competition and using class humiliation as entertainment. He did not ask us to call him brave. That made the confession more believable. Gwangmin was arrested for fraud, forgery, market manipulation, and obstruction. Lee Crown's chairman faced investigation. Sewa's stock continued falling because justice did not automatically restore confidence. New Dawn's rescue plan kept wages paid while the board reorganized. Employees saw my name on the guarantees and began calling me Sewa's hidden owner. I rejected that title publicly. I was a creditor and restoration investor, not the owner of people's work. The new governance charter limited my voting rights and gave employees, outside directors, and the Cha family balanced representation. If Sewa recovered, my returns would be large. They would still be smaller than the control I could have taken. The system transferred restoration equity from the Sewa rescue into a public benefit trust. My personal net worth remained greater than the Cha family's, but the part created from their crisis would not become my private kingdom. That distinction mattered more than headlines understood. Yeren finally read my timeline. She requested one meeting at the Riverside Park where we had once studied after class. She arrived without Dammy and asked me to leave my phone on the bench. No system, no portfolio, no lawyers. Just the person who had lied and the person who had been lied to. She asked whether I had ever considered telling her before she chose me publicly. I said yes, many times. She asked why I had not. I admitted I enjoyed being loved without wealth attached. Her kindness felt like proof I was still the person I had been before the system. I protected that feeling at her expense. Yeren said she had not chosen me because I was poor. She had chosen me because I was stubborn, observant, and gentle with people who could not reward me. Poverty had only made her choice costly in public. My wealth did not destroy those qualities. My deception made her question whether they had been performed. I told her some of them had become performances after I grew afraid of losing her. I allowed her to see the version of me that made her feel safest while hiding the parts that might complicate her choice. That was manipulation even without demanding anything. Saying it aloud made my apology less elegant and more honest. She asked whether the system had predicted she would forgive me. I said I had stopped consulting it about her. Then I gave her the cracked phone and permission to delete every personal note it held. She opened the interface, saw the restoration ledger, and found no relationship score beside her name. Yeren did not forgive me that day. She said trust would not return because Sewa survived, or because my confession sounded intelligent. We could work together publicly on the Horizon project, but privately she needed distance. I agreed. The system recorded consent boundary established, then went quiet. Campus life became unbearable in a new way. Students who had mocked me now bowed, offered investments, and asked for introductions. Some apologized sincerely. Others apologized while holding business plans. I moved out of the dorm only because reporters endangered my roommates, not because the room had become beneath me. Nari and Taesung refused special treatment. They made me continue assembling prototype units and assigned me the worst soldering station because I had missed 2 meetings. Yeren communicated through group messages. Her professionalism hurt, but it also gave us a path that did not depend on romance. Our cooperative received orders from hospitals and emergency centers. Instead of manufacturing through one of my companies, we partnered with regional factories facing closure. The system identified each as a smaller restoration. Workers retained shares, and our student team received royalties under transparent contracts. Yeren led the social impact board. She challenged my proposal to subsidize every unit personally, arguing that endless charity could destroy local competitors and make communities dependent on me. We designed tiered pricing instead. Even while angry with me, she protected the project from my desire to solve too much too quickly. That was when I understood she had always been richer than the image surrounding her. Her value was not her family's buildings. It was the discipline to help without turning help into ownership. The system had taught me the same principle through restrictions. Yeren had learned it by watching wealthy adults use generosity as control. Chairman Cha returned to Sewa under the new governance charter with reduced authority. He apologized to employees for allowing family loyalty to override oversight. Some accepted, others did not. The company's recovery depended on processes, not one speech. Warehouses remained open, wages stabilized, and the forged land deals were reversed. Yeren declined the automatic board seat reserved for the chairman's daughter. She ran for an employee and investor elected position instead. Her family called it unnecessary humiliation. She called it evidence that she wanted authority people could remove. She won narrowly after warehouse workers supported her reform plan. Her first board motion required disclosure of every family-related transaction, including New Dawn's debt position. I voted through a proxy in favor of limiting my own future influence. Reporters called it a romantic gesture. Yeren corrected them publicly. Governance was not flirting. Dammy sent me the clip with 6 laughing emojis. Dammy remained angry at herself for hiding my secret. Yeren eventually forgave her faster than she forgave me because Dammy had known for 2 days, not months, and had forced disclosure rather than protecting it. I accepted the difference. Consequences did not have to be distributed equally to feel fair. My mother finally met Yeren under circumstances neither of us planned. Yeren visited the laundromat to discuss a Sewa community project and found Mother repairing a machine herself. Mother recognized her from the news and immediately asked why such a sensible girl had once chosen her dishonest son. I arrived halfway through tea and wanted the floor to open. Mother told Yeren about the years before the system, when I sold my school laptop to pay Junseo's hospital bill and pretended it had been stolen. She did not share the story to excuse me. She said hardship explained why I feared losing control, but fear did not give me permission to control someone else's knowledge. Yeren listened longer than she spoke. Before leaving, she told Mother that I was learning. Mother replied that learning was useful only if repeated under pressure. They exchanged phone numbers without consulting me. I suspected a dangerous alliance had formed. The criminal investigations widened. Minji's father tried to blame every illegal transaction on his son. Minjae released records proving the opposite. His testimony protected employees but cost his mother access to family assets. New Dawn funded witness security through a court-administered program, so he would not owe me personally. Wusik completed academic probation and returned to a different project team. He apologized to Nari in private and to our group publicly. Nari accepted the factual correction, but not friendship. He learned that confession reopened the future without restoring the past. That lesson applied to me too. The Forgotten Value system reached 90 restorations. It offered me an early completion option, acquire 10 distressed companies through automated bidding. The businesses would survive, workers would remain employed, and my ownership would increase. It looked ethical until I noticed the owners had not consented to surrender control. I rejected the shortcut. The system revealed it had been a temptation test. Forgotten Value could be restored or colonized. The difference often depended on whether money arrived as partnership or inevitability. My wealth had grown because I saw what others ignored. That did not make every ignored thing mine. Yeren heard about the rejected acquisitions through the project board. She asked why I refused them. I said because rescue without choice could become capture. She looked at me for a long moment and said I finally sounded like someone who understood why she had been angry. We began speaking outside project meetings again, slowly. No dramatic reconciliation. She asked about Junseo's exams. I asked about her father's recovery. We discussed books, factory wages, and whether convenience store coffee counted as punishment. The ordinary topics felt fragile because neither of us pretended the damage had vanished. One evening, rain trapped us beneath the engineering building canopy. The scene resembled every romance drama Yeren hated. She asked whether my driver was coming. I said I had taken the subway. She accused me of performing poverty again. I showed her the transit card and said rich people were legally allowed underground. She laughed before she could stop herself. The sound made hope rise too quickly. I did not reach for her or ask whether the laugh meant forgiveness. Restraint was not passivity anymore. It was allowing her reaction to belong entirely to her. Our next major order came from a rural hospital network unable to afford backup generators. The project required more capital than the cooperative possessed. I offered a low-interest loan through the Public Benefit Trust. Yeren insisted the hospitals receive shared ownership in the maintenance network. The system approved the structure and counted Restoration 91. We traveled to Gangwon Province for installation. Without campus gossip or family boardrooms, we worked like ordinary teammates. Yeren carried tools, argued with technicians, and ate noodles in a hospital basement. A nurse assumed we were married because of how efficiently we disagreed. Yeren nearly choked. That night, the region lost power during a storm. Our units kept neonatal monitors and oxygen equipment running until generators started. Watching parents hold sleeping babies beneath emergency lights changed the meaning of every valuation on my phone. Wealth became real only when translated into uninterrupted breathing. Yeren stood beside me after the crisis and said this was why she had defended me in the cafeteria. Not because I looked poor, but because she saw me give my seat to an elderly cleaner before Minjae arrived. She had chosen the person who noticed others. She wanted to know whether that person still existed. I said he existed, but wealth had made him easier to hide behind strategies. She replied that kindness without honesty became impossible to trust. I agreed. Then she took my hand briefly, not as reconciliation, but as recognition that we were still moving in the same direction. Back in Seoul, Sewa announced its first profitable quarter under the new governance model. The Cha family's personal ownership had fallen, yet the company was more stable. Employees received recovery bonuses. Chairman Cha told reporters his daughter had saved Sewa. Yeren corrected him and listed workers, auditors, and lenders before mentioning herself. New Dawn's investment gained enormous value. Under the restoration rules, part of the return entered my portfolio and pushed my net worth beyond public estimates of the Cha family fortune. Financial media called me Korea's invisible young billionaire. They used photos of my worn shoes because poverty-to-power stories sold better than governance diagrams. Yeren saw the headline and messaged me that my shoes had become national propaganda. I bought a new pair, not luxury, just durable, and sent her the receipt. The system approved practical replacement. She replied that romance was alive and hiding inside tax documentation. The public began insisting Yeren had made the smartest romantic choice in Korea by selecting a poor boy who turned out richer than her family. The narrative angered both of us. It erased her willingness to choose me before wealth and turned love into successful investment timing. She published an essay saying people were not stocks whose hidden value justified kindness. Her essay went viral more widely than my net worth. She wrote that decency should not require a secret billionaire twist. A poor student deserved protection even if he remained poor forever. A rich girl's kindness was not proven wise because the boy later became powerful. It was right at the moment she chose it. I read the essay 3 times. It defended the person I had been and the people who would never receive systems. The forgotten value system displayed no financial opportunity, only a note, value recognized without ownership. I saved the message because it described Yeren better than any family profile. Minji's disciplinary hearing arrived months after the original cafeteria incident. He faced charges for harassment, academic manipulation, and bribing Wusik. His cooperation in the corporate case reduced legal consequences, but not university discipline. Students expected me to demand expulsion. I submitted a statement describing what he had done and left punishment to the panel. Yeren testified about his coercive marriage proposal and the role it played in the Sewa scheme. Minjae did not challenge her. He admitted he had mistaken family strategy for personal entitlement because nobody around him separated the two. The panel suspended him for a year, revoked leadership privileges, and required restitution work with campus service employees. Some called it too soft. Others called it career destruction. Minjae said nothing publicly. He began his first week cleaning cafeteria storage beside workers he once ignored. When he saw me, he asked whether I enjoyed the reversal. I answered honestly, part of me did. He said at least I had not become unbearably noble. I told him enjoying consequence did not mean I should design it alone. He nodded, then returned to stacking trays without asking forgiveness. The system reached Restoration 95 through projects unrelated to Sewa, a closed textile mill converted into worker-owned housing materials, a rejected accessibility app rebuilt with disabled users, and a failing bookstore transformed into a community study cooperative. My portfolio kept growing, but each deal gave me less control and more partners. Financial advisors warned I was surrendering billions in potential ownership. I told them I already had more money than one person could experience meaningfully. The challenge was preventing abundance from becoming gravity that pulled every decision toward me. Some advisors resigned. Mira stayed and charged more. Yeren and I attended the Horizon Award Gala as project representatives. Months earlier, she would have taken my arm naturally. This time, she asked whether physical closeness was comfortable. Consent in something as small as a photograph made me understand how much my secrecy had taken. I said yes, and she linked her arm through mine. Reporters shouted questions about marriage, net worth, and whether Sewa would merge with my companies. Yeren answered that our project sold emergency power units, not engagement announcements. I added that Sewa's independence was legally protected. Romance speculation survived, but at least it did not become a merger rumor. During the gala, a fire alarm triggered and guests rushed toward exits. A decorative lighting rig fell near a server carrying trays. Yeren moved before security, pulling the woman away. I used the system's emergency fund to cover medical evaluation for several workers. Later, nobody photographed them. Media focused on Yeren's dress. We asked the venue to release safety records and discovered repeated complaints about the rig. Management had delayed repairs to avoid disrupting luxury events. The system identified the venue as Restoration 96, but I refused ownership. Instead, workers used the evidence to force repairs, compensation, and a safety committee. Yeren said the old me might have bought the venue. I said the old rich me had never existed long enough to develop habits. The poor me would have complained and been ignored. The person I was becoming needed to ask what solution left others stronger after I walked away. Her trust returned in pieces. She shared family fears without asking whether I had a financial answer. I listened without opening the system. She visited my mother without reporters. I attended her father's rehabilitation session and let Chairman Cha beat me badly at a board game without acquiring the company that manufactured it. One evening, Yeren returned the cracked phone. She had deleted nothing. She said the system records proved my investments, not my character. Character would be judged by what I did after the crisis ended and gratitude stopped protecting me. I told her that sounded like a long evaluation. She said the position was competitive. I asked whether I could apply again as her boyfriend. She said not yet. Then she leaned forward and kissed my cheek, explaining that applications sometimes included preliminary interviews. I stood frozen long enough for the system to ask whether I required medical assistance. We officially began again under rules Yeren wrote half-jokingly, and I treated seriously. No hidden financial intervention in her family matters. No gifts large enough to create obligation. No strategic silence disguised as protection. Either person could request space without punishment. Dammy reviewed the rules and added penalties for stupidity. Our first date after reconciliation cost less than the meal Min-jae had thrown months earlier. We ate street tteokbokki beside the river. Yeren admitted she had missed stealing food from my tray. I bought an extra portion. She said planning for theft removed the romance. The forgotten value system reached 99 restorations. The final opportunity appeared in the laundromat where my life had begun. The building owner planned to demolish the block for luxury studios. Small businesses could not match the offer. The system showed hidden value not in land price, but in the community network built across decades. I could buy the block personally and preserve everything. That would make tenants dependent on my mercy. Instead, we formed a community land trust. Residents contributed what they could, the city provided preservation financing, and my foundation guaranteed the loan without owning the property. Mother held one vote, equal to the barber, grocer, and upstairs tenants. The project became Restoration 100. The system unlocked full access to every accumulated asset and removed the vanity restrictions. A final valuation appeared. My private and trust-controlled holdings were worth more than Sewa Group, Lee Crown Hotels, and several listed conglomerates combined. Then the system asked what I wanted as my completion reward. The options included a private island, political influence network, control of restored companies, or permanent prediction of hidden asset value. The last option would let me become richer almost without limit. I thought of Yeren's essay and chose none. I asked the system to convert itself into an open restoration framework available to cooperatives, public funds, and small investors, with no single user able to capture every gain. The screen remained silent for a full minute. Then it accepted, transferring my private advantage into a regulated platform governed by independent trustees and restoration partners. My existing wealth remained enormous, but the monopoly ended. Mira called the decision financially irrational and ethically inconvenient. She also admitted grandmother-level lawyers would admire it if I had a grandmother involved. I told her the system had been enough of one. When I told Yeren, she asked whether I had surrendered the one thing that made me uniquely powerful. I said I had surrendered being the only person allowed to see value others ignored. She smiled and said that was the first billionaire decision she found genuinely attractive. The public platform launched with full disclosure of my ownership and limits. Critics accused me of manipulating markets. Regulators imposed restrictions. Community groups complained the process was too complex. The system no longer solved those problems privately. Shared power came with shared frustration, which was the point. Yeren joined the platform's ethics council only after resigning from New Dawn negotiations to avoid conflicts. She received the same vote as worker representatives and public interest lawyers. I held one founder seat that could be removed by supermajority. My advisors mourned the loss of absolute control like a family death. Sewa used the platform to restore 3 supplier companies without acquiring them. Workers retained ownership, Sewa secured contracts, and New Dawn earned capped returns. The model proved cooperation could compete with predatory takeovers, though it required more patience and meetings than television dramas would tolerate. Chairman Cha asked whether I still intended to marry his daughter. I nearly choked on tea. Yeren told him our relationship was not a board agenda. He replied that fathers were allowed private anxiety. She said private anxiety should remain private. I admired her governance style. My mother asked a different question, whether Yeren made me more honest when nobody watched. I said yes. Mother said then wealth difference mattered less than whether each person could still say no. She gave Yeren the laundromat's spare key, a gesture more serious than any engagement blessing. Junseo loved telling classmates his brother was secretly rich until mother made him explain that most of the wealth belonged to companies, trusts, and other people's work. He revised the story to say I controlled many complicated spreadsheets. Popularity declined immediately. Nari became technical director of the Emergency Power Cooperative. Taesung led design. Neither reported to me directly. Our units reached hospitals, shelters, fishing villages, and disaster teams. Every shipment carried the names of the student founders equally. Yeren rejected marketing that centered our romance. Wusik later applied for a junior testing role at the cooperative. Nari approved him under probation after an independent panel reviewed his work. He accepted lower authority and strict audit rules. Trust did not return, but a future became possible. Restoration was never the same as pretending damage had not occurred. Min-jae completed his service year and returned to university without family money. He worked part-time at the cafeteria because most companies avoided the scandal. One afternoon, he served soup to a freshman and warned him not to throw it unless he wanted his life turned into symbolism. The freshman looked terrified. Min-jae apologized to the cafeteria worker from our first conflict and paid for the damaged equipment from his wages. She accepted the payment and told him apology was cheaper than cleaning grease traps. He kept working. Yeren said consequence had finally taught him a language his family never used. Dami became Yeren's chief governance advisor at Sewa, though she claimed the title sounded older than she felt. She still inspected every contract involving me. When I complained, she reminded me that secrecy had once almost destroyed her friendship. Oversight was the fee for continued access. The legal cases against Gwangmin and Lee Crown's chairman ended with convictions. Assets recovered from shell companies funded employee pensions and supplier losses. Gwangmin blamed Yeren for destroying family unity. She answered that unity built on silence was only coordinated fear. Chairman Cha retired from daily management after 1 year and remained a limited advisor. He struggled with reduced power but respected the charter. He admitted Sewa's survival had required his daughter to choose principles over family control. Yeren said she had learned that from watching him fail, which was not the compliment he expected. My relationship with wealth changed after the system completed. I bought mother a safer home only after she chose the location and signed ownership in her own name. I purchased a comfortable car because security made public transport disruptive. I also continued checking food prices, though Yeren accused me of performing emotional accounting. I learned that rejecting all comfort could become another vanity. Poverty had taught me scarcity, not moral purity. The goal was not to remain visibly poor after becoming rich. It was to enjoy wealth without making other people carry the cost or worship the person providing it. Yeren bought me an expensive watch for my birthday and waited for panic. The system restrictions were gone, but old fear remained. She said accepting a gift was not corruption when the giver expected no control. I wore it, then gave her a handmade prototype keychain that cost almost nothing. She valued both without pretending they were financially equal. Financial media continued comparing our families. Some called me richer. Others argued Sewa's influence exceeded my private liquidity. Yeren and I stopped correcting them. Ranking affection beside market capitalization was too ridiculous to deserve energy. Dami collected the worst headlines for entertainment. At Seer and Crown's Next Horizon Challenge, we served as judges under strict conflict rules. A poor student presented a water purification design, while wealthy judges questioned his manufacturing experience. Yeren stopped them and asked about the design itself. I recognized the same moment from the cafeteria, power deciding whether to see a person. The student's prototype failed during demonstration. Instead of rejecting it, the restoration platform revealed possible partners and test grants to the entire panel, not only me. He received support without surrendering ownership. Watching someone else access the opportunity convinced me the system's final transformation had been correct. After the event, he thanked me for believing in hidden value. I told him Yeren had believed in me before hidden value became visible. She corrected me. She had believed I deserved soup-free lunch, which was a lower standard. The student looked confused. We let him remain confused. Our romance never became a clean fairy tale. I still withheld information when afraid. Yeren sometimes tried to solve emotional problems through formal rules. We argued about security, work, family, and whether I used humor to avoid vulnerability. The difference was that silence no longer controlled the relationship. When conflict became serious, we returned to the riverside bench and left our phones aside. No systems, boards, or assistants. We spoke until each person could repeat the other's fear accurately. Agreement was optional. Understanding was required. It was slower than strategy and more difficult than acquisition. One argument concerned marriage. My advisors wanted a prenuptial structure protecting the restoration trusts. Sewa's lawyers feared public suspicion. Yeren refused to discuss marriage through representatives. She said if we could not speak about money directly, we had learned nothing. We spent weeks designing boundaries before making any decision. Separate ownership, shared household choices, no automatic merger, independent charitable work, and full disclosure of conflicts. Romance did not erase unequal wealth. Honest structure prevented unequal wealth from quietly becoming authority. I proposed without cameras at Mother's laundromat after closing. I did not offer a ring first. I asked whether Yeren wanted to build a life where either of us could remain whole without owning the other. She cried, called the wording painfully on-brand, and said yes. The ring came later, chosen together from a small designer cooperative. Reporters were disappointed it lacked a famous brand. Yeren said the designer's ownership model was more romantic than a logo. I agreed because disagreeing during engagement week seemed strategically unwise. Minjae sent a simple congratulations message and no flowers. Dami approved the restraint. Nari and Taesung demanded the emergency power cooperative provide backup electricity at the wedding because our lives attracted preventable disasters. Mother demanded affordable food and no investor speeches. Chairman Cha and my mother met to discuss the ceremony. He proposed a hotel ballroom. She proposed the community center. They compromised on Siren Crown's botanical courtyard, with catering from local businesses and no corporate banners. Yeren said watching two parents negotiate was more frightening than market warfare. Before the wedding, the restoration platform faced its first major scandal. A regional manager had favored companies owned by relatives and hidden conflicts. Critics claimed shared governance was as corrupt as private control. They were right about the misconduct, wrong about the conclusion. No structure eliminated human weakness. We suspended the manager, opened records, compensated affected applicants, and strengthened random audits. I did not defend the platform as pure. Yeren said institutions became trustworthy not by avoiding failure, but by making failure visible and reparable before victims had to become heroes. The scandal delayed several projects and reduced public confidence. My old system could have identified every hidden connection instantly. I missed the certainty. Then community investigators found evidence the private system would have shown me, proving shared capability could grow even without magical advantage. Our wedding was smaller than the press expected and larger than Mother wanted. Yeren walked beside her father, not behind him. Dami held her flowers. Junho, whom I had met through the platform's technology council, managed streaming security and threatened anyone who posted private vows early. I promised no kingdoms, mergers, or eternal financial growth. I promised disclosure before strategy, consent before rescue, and enough humility to admit when wealth made me dangerous. Yeren promised to defend me when I deserved it, oppose me when I needed it, and never again assume my cheap shoes revealed my balance. When we kissed, Junseo started clapping too early and caused everyone else to laugh. The moment felt ordinary, which made it perfect. No system message appeared. No restoration count increased. Some value should remain unmeasured even by a tool designed to find what others missed. Marriage did not end the work. Sewa expanded employee ownership. The power cooperative entered other countries through local partnerships. The restoration platform supported abandoned clinics, farms, software, and factories. Some succeeded. Some failed honestly. Not every neglected thing contained a fortune. That limitation mattered. The old system had shown potential, not destiny. We learned to let projects end without blaming people or forcing endless investment to protect our pride. Restoration sometimes meant preserving knowledge, paying debts fairly, and allowing closure. Yeren became Sewa's elected chairperson 3 years later, winning support from employees and outside investors rather than inheriting the role automatically. Her family still held shares, but the vote could remove her. She called that pressure healthy. Chairman Cha called it terrifying progress. I remained the largest individual beneficiary of the restoration trusts, richer on paper than the entire Cha family. Yet my control was narrower than before. Independent boards, community trusts, and partner ownership limited what I could command. Wealth increased while domination decreased. That became my preferred definition of success. Students at Searing Crown still told the story incorrectly. They said the richest girl chose a poor boy and accidentally won a hidden billionaire. The version made excellent thumbnails and terrible history. Yeren had not won me. She had risked status to defend someone who appeared unable to repay her. And I had not secretly owned everything when we first met. I owned fragments of forgotten futures, growing faster than I understood. The system made me richer than her family, but it did not make me worthy of her. Wealth revealed possibilities. Honesty, consequences, and repeated choices built worth slowly. We returned to the cafeteria on the anniversary of the soup incident. The worker who had witnessed it now supervised the entire dining hall. She served Minji's old soup recipe and warned me not to romanticize cold food. Yeren stole my dumpling before I sat down. A student nearby recognized us and whispered that we could buy the university. Yeren replied without turning that buying institutions was usually how trouble started. I added that cafeteria prices were already aggressive enough. The student laughed and stopped staring. The forgotten value interface still existed on my phone in its public platform form. It no longer showed secret fortunes only to me. It displayed proposals, community votes, risk reports, and unresolved objections. The screen had become less magical and more democratic. I trusted it more. Sometimes I missed the private certainty of seeing exactly what an abandoned asset could become. Then I remembered how easily certainty had encouraged me to hide truth from Yeren. Power often felt safest when nobody could challenge its information. That was precisely when it became dangerous. Mother kept the laundromat even after moving. She said machines were easier to understand than billionaires. The community trust renovated the building, added childcare upstairs, and preserved affordable shops. Her one vote remained equal to everyone else's. She used it aggressively. Juncio studied economics and announced he would never join my companies. He wanted to regulate people like me. I paid his tuition through the same transparent family policy available to relatives and told him to become excellent at it. Yeren said raising an internal critic was our best long-term investment. Dami eventually started her own governance firm and refused Sewa's attempt to acquire it. Nari's cooperative became a major manufacturer. Taesung designed disaster shelters. Wusik led quality control under Nari and never asked to erase the history between them. Minjae became a hospitality labor compliance consultant, which nobody would have predicted kindly. Not every relationship became friendship. That was another lesson wealth resisted. Money could create meetings, opportunities, and second chances. It could not require affection. Minjae and I became honest acquaintances. Wusik and Nari became functional colleagues. Yeren forgave Dami, but still argued with her weekly. Guangmin remained in prison through most of Sewa's recovery. He sent Yeren letters claiming she had destroyed the Cha legacy. She replied once. The legacy had survived because control did not. Then she stopped reading. Family access was not a permanent right after repeated harm. Chairman Cha spent retirement visiting warehouses without press teams. At first, employees avoided him. Slowly, some spoke. He learned how many problems had been filtered before reaching his office. He told me leadership had made him informed about everything except reality. I understood. On our 5th anniversary, Yeren asked whether I would change the day I revealed my secret. I said yes. I would tell her before she publicly chose me, even if it meant losing the relationship. She said that answer mattered more than wishing the lie had produced less pain. She admitted she would still protect the poor-looking student from Minjae, not because she knew his future, but because the action had been right without a reward. That certainty became the emotional center of our life. Decency did not need hidden value to justify itself. The platform's millionth restoration was not a company. It was a rural school library scheduled for demolition. Local residents chose to preserve it, students designed its future, and our fund provided only part of the capital. The project generated no major profit. The system marked it successful. I asked Yeren why the library mattered so much. She said some things became valuable because people were allowed to keep sharing them, not because markets discovered a better price. The old system might have called that hidden value. She called it belonging. When people asked whether I owned everything, I learned to answer carefully. I owned shares, patents, trusts, and obligations. I did not own Yeren, the communities restored by our funds, the workers creating value, or the futures those projects made possible. Ownership was a legal tool, not a moral description of the world. The richest girl had chosen me while believing I had nothing. Later, she discovered my system had made me richer than her entire family. That revelation almost ended us because it transformed her brave choice into a situation she had not consented to. Love survived only after wealth stopped being the hidden author. I once believed the system's greatest gift was seeing value before everyone else. I was wrong. Its greatest gift was forcing me to decide what happened after I saw it. I could capture, rescue, share, conceal, or restore. Every choice changed more than my balance. It changed the kind of person standing beside the opportunity. So this is not the story of a rich girl rewarded for choosing a poor boy. It is the story of Cha Yeren choosing kindness without knowing the ending, and Kang Jiho nearly losing her because he mistook secrecy for safety. The system made me richer than her family. She taught me that the most valuable things in my life would disappear the moment I tried to own them alone.